You may have seen recent discussion around Camilla and her decision to step away from subscription-based content. Before jumping to conclusions, this isn't about attacking her, judging her choices, or claiming anyone was deceived. What's interesting is the reaction. Because every time a creator exits this kind of platform, a similar pattern appears. Some fans feel confused, others feel disappointed, and a portion say they feel misled, even when no explicit promises were ever made. That disconnect usually comes from something people don't talk about enough: parasocial expectations and the unspoken contract between creators and their audiences. So instead of speculating about personal motives, let's talk about why creators in this position often leave, why fans react so strongly, and why these exits almost always feel sudden from the outside. One of the biggest reasons situations like this create strong reactions is because, from a fan's perspective, the exit feels sudden. From the outside, everything often looks normal. Content continues, engagement stays high, posts look consistent, and then, almost overnight, there's an announcement, a pivot, or a quiet step back. But what fans usually don't see is that these decisions are rarely spontaneous. For creators in this position, the choice to leave or change direction often builds slowly over time. It can involve burnout, long-term planning, pressure that isn't visible publicly, or concerns about where things are heading months or years down the line. The disconnect happens because fans only see the finished product, not the internal timeline. So when the exit finally becomes public, it feels abrupt, even though the decision itself may have been forming long before anyone noticed. That gap in perspective is where a lot of confusion starts. Fans experience the change all at once, while creators experience it as the final step in a much longer process. This is where parasocial expectations come into play. Parasocial relationships form when audiences feel a sense of familiarity or connection with someone they don't actually know personally. And online platforms are especially good at encouraging this because they reward consistency, access, and perceived closeness. When someone appears regularly, speaks directly to an audience, and shares parts of their life or personality, it's natural for viewers to feel invested. Over time, that investment can start to feel personal, even if the interaction is one-sided. What makes this stronger on subscription-based platforms is the sense of ongoing access. Fans aren't just watching content. They're participating in something that feels continuous. That creates an expectation, even if it's never explicitly stated. And that's the key point. These expectations usually aren't promised. They're implied by repetition. So when a creator steps away, some fans experience it not just as content ending, but as a relationship changing without warning. That reaction isn't about entitlement. It's about how the system trains people to interpret consistency as permanence. Parasocial expectations don't mean anyone did something wrong. They mean the platform design encourages emotional attachment without clear boundaries. And when those boundaries suddenly appear, the emotional response can be intense. This leads into what many people describe as the unspoken contract. In most cases, creators don't promise permanence, they don't guarantee access forever, and they don't explicitly say that things will stay the same long term. But fans often interpret consistency as a kind of informal agreement. If content keeps coming, if interaction feels personal, and if access feels ongoing, it's easy to assume that continuity is implied. That's where misunderstanding starts. Another layer that complicates this is the use of intermediaries, often called chatters, who handle a large portion of fan interaction behind the scenes. From a fan's perspective, conversations can feel direct and personal. Messages feel responsive. Engagement feels real. But many fans don't realize that not every interaction is coming from the creator themselves. When that reality becomes clearer, especially around the time a creator steps away, some fans feel a sense of emotional whiplash, not because they were explicitly lied to, but because the experience felt more personal than it actually was. This is why some fans say they feel misled, not because a promise was broken, but because the boundaries were never clearly defined in the first place. The system encourages closeness, but it doesn't always explain how that closeness is managed. So when access changes or when a creator exits, Fans are left reconciling what they thought the relationship was with what it actually was. And that gap is where frustration, disappointment, and confusion tend to surface. When creators in this position decide to step away, it's usually framed as a personal choice, a shift in priorities, or a desire for privacy. And while those explanations may be valid, they don't exist in a vacuum. What often gets overlooked is how the entire system operates, especially when it comes to how fans are actually interacted with on a day-to-day basis. Many subscription-based platforms rely heavily on chatters or third-party teams to manage fan communication at scale. From a business perspective, this makes sense, but from a fan's perspective, it raises important questions about transparency and expectation. Fans often believe they are engaging directly with the creator. Conversations feel personal, messages feel tailored, emotional investment builds. Yet in many cases, those interactions are being filtered, guided, or fully handled by someone else. This isn't necessarily framed clearly up front, and that's where discomfort begins. When a creator eventually exits or pulls back, fans aren't just losing content, they're forced to reevaluate the nature of the interactions they thought they were having. That realization can feel unsettling, especially for people who invested time, money, or emotional energy under a different assumption. This is why the role of chatters deserves more open discussion. Not to accuse creators of wrongdoing, but to ask whether fans are being given enough clarity about how engagement actually works. If platforms benefit from emotional connection, then there should also be clearer boundaries around how that connection is managed. Otherwise, fans are left navigating an experience that feels personal while being treated as transactional behind the scenes. Looking more closely at this dynamic isn't about blaming individuals. It's about acknowledging that the system prioritizes scale and revenue, often at the expense of transparency, and fans are the ones who absorb that impact when the illusion breaks. At the end of the day, this conversation isn't about taking shots at creators or assigning blame to one individual. It's about acknowledging how these systems actually affect the people on the other side of the screen, the fans. Too often, discussions focus on protecting platforms or defending creator choices, while the emotional and financial impact on fans gets brushed aside or minimized. And that's the part that deserves more attention. Fans aren't wrong for feeling confused. They aren't weak for feeling attached. And they aren't stupid for believing interactions were more personal than they turned out to be. Those expectations didn't appear out of nowhere. They were shaped by how these platforms are designed and how engagement is managed. That's why this channel exists. This channel is here to ask uncomfortable questions, to push for more transparency, and to advocate for the people who are usually told to just move on when the illusion breaks. Being on the side of fans doesn't mean attacking creators. It means recognizing when systems benefit from emotional investment without offering clear boundaries or honesty in return. If these platforms are going to profit from connection, then fans deserve clarity, protection, and respect, not silence when things change. And that's the perspective this channel will continue to bring.